You are wrong about Yuji Itadori's curse technique. That's going to be so fun to talk about. But no, I think when I say that, what I have to clarify is you specifically are not wrong. It has been speculation for years at this point what Yuji's technique will be. And for the most part, everybody has some theory on what it would be. And we're going to talk about that. But in general, I think all of us collectively as an audience might have just the wrong idea about what Yuji's curse technique is. So let's go ahead and get into it. When I say that we have the wrong idea, what I really mean is that Gege has prominently displayed a ability to write long-term storytelling, as well as the ability to create ideas that seem like they should be integrated with the story, but actually have no basis. So we spend a ridiculous amount of time, hypothesizing about them, and then they ultimately were never that important to begin with. I think one of the funniest ones around that is a lot of people used to talk about what Hanami's domain expansion would be, and fun fact, Gege never made one. We have no idea if Hanami could actually, fully pull off a domain expansion, despite the fact that he said that during the training arc, Sister School Exchange event. Gege never made one for Hanami, so there was never any intent to use it. I think that that's really funny because when we look at it that way, and he's done that several times throughout the series, Yuji's curse technique definitely qualifies. It's something we have speculated on for years, and to be frankly honest, really, Gege as an offer has never hinted that Yuji would ever have one. There's never been really that much of an indication in the story, in the manga, and in panels. Nothing. We've had characters who speculated what his ability should be, most notably Gojo saying that he should inherit Sukuna's technique. And I should point that out. Sukuna's technique should likely be the one that Yuji develops from how much time he had around him. There's even the closest thing we've ever gotten to a hint that Yuji has a technique is him saying he would eat anything to get Megami back. Or to end this, actually, was the line. But the really funny thing is that that's kind of so ambiguous, it doesn't mean that he inherited Sukuna's technique. And if you're not aware, there's a large speculation that Sukuna's technique has more to do with eating than it does with cutting. That's going to be a video on its own, but essentially a lot of people think that he consumes people and he gains their curse technique, like Meruem from Hunter x Hunter. That's the basics of it. And a lot of people think Yuji will have gotten that. And well, I don't think that's an impossibility, and that would be an interesting power for him to have. There's also a strong possibility that all he was referring to was eating Sukuna's last finger, or somehow forcing Sukuna into a finger, tearing it off of Megami, and eating that to exorcise him from Megami. Either of those is a potential option, or it could even mean eating a different incarnated sorcerer or spirit anyway. So the line itself is ambiguous despite what we have speculated, and that does leave us with the quandary of what is his actual technique, and his actual technique is he doesn't have one. I don't think Yuji was ever specifically meant in the story to have a curse technique. And because he didn't have a curse technique, because he wasn't designed around one, it allowed Gege to essentially create the idea of what was popular at the time and has started to wane off recently, the underpowered main character. I think the difference was from other characters that embodied that idea, Yuji has actually managed to progress quite a lot throughout the series, learning different skills, techniques. He's definitely a grade 1 sorcerer by the end of the manga. But do I think he's going to suddenly develop a curse technique? Maybe, but I don't think he was originally meant to. If Gege adds on a curse technique now, there will be problems with it. I think the chiefest of which was it won't be a curse technique like we have seen curse technique from every other character in this series. He was a character who was just supposed to embody the simplicity of Jujutsu. He could, imbue his energy into his strikes. He could potentially, he could have learned things like Simple Domain, and there's a possibility he actually could have learned that in the series. I'm actually hoping maybe he'll break that out against Sukuna, because Sukuna has a very funny weakness to Simple Domain, which would be just absolutely hilarious to watch. But because of that, I don't think Yuji was... And, maybe he was always meant to be more of a cursed tool user like Maki. And that would be fine, too. He's certainly using boxing gloves right now. I feel like part of the reason I say that he's not meant to have a technique is if Gege was going to bust out the fact that he had a technique, that probably would have been deployed when Gojo died. But he hasn't yet. As a matter of fact, they're relying on Higuruma's technique. Do I think Higuruma's technique is going to work? Yes and no. Should it work? Absolutely. Will it work in this story? Probably not. So because of that, I feel like if you were going to bust it out, it might come after Higuruma's domain expansion collapses. But if it does, once again, I'm going to say this, it won't have felt earned. Because when we look at curse techniques in the story, they're not just powers. They are much like quirks in My Hero and some of, devil fruits in One Piece. They become an embodiment of the person. In some ways, they also function a little bit like stands in JoJo's. It is a person on a psychological, on a physical, on a metaphysical level. And because of that, if Yuji were just to suddenly gain a curse technique, I'd be hyped. I like Yuji as a main character. I'd love to see him just beat the heck out of Sukuna. But at this point, that wouldn't be a curse technique. It's just a random power-up. So that doesn't mean that Gege might not be able to work it into the story correctly. I mean, he has certainly surprised me at several junctions of this series. I just think that, to be honest, the best aspect of curse techniques in this series was we got to watch so many characters build them up. The Ten Shadows technique was built up. He even went back to the beginning to show us Gojo building up the Limitless technique and the buildup of, curse spirit manipulation. So obviously, momentum progress and the journey there was always a big aspect of this series. If Yuji just kind of materializes the power, I would be slightly disappointed. But I won't deny it would also be hype. But what do you think? Does Yuji have a curse technique? Is he going to suddenly manifest one? There are also some other curse techniques due to his lineage that people tend to talk about. Things related to anti-gravity and, blood manipulation. So do you think he will be able to utilize those for one reason or another? Let me know in the comments below.